The smell hit first. A rotting stench so thick, neighbors blamed the local sausage shop. But the truth was worse. That odor, human decay, 11 women, hidden in walls, buried in shallow graves, a skull in a bucket, all while Anthony Sowell, a decorated Marine-turned-predator, lived among the stench of his crimes. For years, Cleveland missed the signs.
Serial killer Anthony Sowell. Reaction from the families of his 11 victims, not ranging very far, from good riddance to hoping he rots in hell.
These were black women, addicts, the forgotten, until one survivor escaped and exposed a house of horrors hiding in plain sight. This is the chilling story of Anthony Sowell, the Cleveland Strangler, and how he turned his home into a house of horrors while an entire neighborhood remained oblivious. Welcome back to Bad Bad People, where we deep dive into the most mind-boggling cases. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss any episode. Anthony Sowell's descent into darkness began in the cramped East Cleveland home where he was raised. Born in 1959 to Claudia Gertrude Garrison, a single mother of 7, Sowell grew up in an environment where violence was the norm. His mother subjected the children to brutal beatings, whippings with electrical cords that left them bleeding. The abuse extended beyond physical punishment. At just 11 years old, Sowell allegedly began sexually assaulting his 10-year-old niece, a pattern of abuse that would continue for 2 horrifying years. The military offered temporary escape. At 18, Sowell joined the Marines, serving honorably for 7 years and rising to the rank of sergeant. But the discipline of military life couldn't contain his inner demons. After his discharge in 1985, his violent tendencies resurfaced with terrifying intensity. In 1989, he lured a pregnant 21-year-old woman from a Euclid Avenue motel to his home, where he choked her until she lost consciousness and then raped her. The attack earned him a 15-year prison sentence, but the system failed to recognize him for what he was, not just a violent offender, but a predator who would only grow more dangerous with time. Behind bars, Sowell played the model inmate, biding his time until his 2005 release. The parole board saw a man who had served his time, not the ticking time bomb he truly was. Little did they know they were unleashing a killer who would turn his Cleveland home into a graveyard. Sowell's victims shared heartbreaking similarities: black women battling addiction, trauma, and systemic indifference.
Ever since police found the bodies of 11 women at Anthony Sowell's house.
Crystal Dozier, a 38-year-old mother of 7, vanished in May 2007. Her family knew something was wrong when the woman who called her children daily suddenly stopped contacting them. Her son, a Marine on leave, combed Cleveland streets searching for her, but police showed little interest in the case of a black woman with a drug history. Tishana Culver's story was equally tragic. The 33-year-old cosmetology graduate had trained as a nursing assistant before her life spiraled after her boyfriend's suicide. She lived just 4 houses down from her killer when she disappeared in June 2008. Then there was Leshanda Long, Sowell's youngest victim at just 25, a mother of 3 whose disappearance didn't even warrant a missing persons report. These women's stories reveal a painful truth about how society values certain lives. Michelle Mason, 45, had turned her life around after surviving a shooting, working with an AIDS outreach program before vanishing in October 2008. Talasia Fortson, 31, a foster child who battled addiction, wasn't reported missing until after bodies were found at Sowell's home. The system failed them at every turn, their disappearances ignored, their cases deprioritized, their families left to search abandoned buildings and post homemade flyers while a predator operated in plain sight. As the body count grew, one question haunted Cleveland. How many more women would have to vanish before someone took notice? The answer would come from an unlikely source, a survivor who barely escaped with her life.
We as a community have to value life. Everyone counts. And just because a person doesn't fit a certain standard doesn't mean that they're...
For nearly 2 years, the sickly, sweet stench of death hung over Imperial Avenue, filling the neighborhood with an odor so foul residents could taste it. Neighbors pointed fingers at Ray's Sausage Company next door, after which the family-owned business was forced to spend $30,000 upgrading ventilation systems to combat the smell. Workers scrubbed floors with industrial-strength bleach until their hands burned. "We used enough to make a commercial," the owner would later say, never suspecting the true source of the rotten air whirling just next door. Inside 12,205 Imperial Avenue, Anthony Sowell lived comfortably among the dead. The 3-story house became his private tomb, where victims decomposed in the basement, lay wrapped in plastic bags in crawl spaces, and were buried in shallow graves beneath the backyard. The stench grew so overpowering that Sowell's girlfriend at that time, Lori Frazier, who happens to be niece of Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson, moved out after complaining about the smell, which Sowell casually dismissed as coming from his stepmother. The nightmare might have continued indefinitely if not for LaTundra Billups. In September 2009, the 37-year-old went to Sowell's home to smoke crack when she made the fatal mistake of asking about neighborhood rumors linking him to attacks on local women. His response was swift and brutal, a vicious beating, rape, and strangulation with an extension cord. When Billups miraculously regained consciousness, she saw Sowell's shocked face staring down at her before she escaped to alert police. Her courage would finally break the cycle of death on Imperial Avenue, setting in motion a chain of events that would expose the full horror hidden behind those ordinary-looking walls. On October 29, 2009, Cleveland police officers entered Sowell's home armed with nothing more than a routine arrest warrant for assault. What they found would haunt them forever. The smell hit first, that same nauseating odor neighbors had complained about for years, now unmistakably human. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness to reveal 2 badly decomposed bodies in the basement. As they pressed further, horror piled upon horror. 2 more victims in a 3rd-floor crawl space, another in the basement, all in various states of decay. The discoveries kept coming. A human skull rested in a plastic bucket. Shallow graves in the backyard yielded 3 more bodies. Investigators would eventually piece together the full scope of the nightmare. 11 women murdered over 2 years, their bodies hidden like trash in the very house where Sowell ate, slept, and lived his daily life. The murder weapons were chillingly mundane. Telephone chargers, shoelaces, extension cords turned into instruments of death. Many victims were found naked from the waist down, their positioning suggesting sexual assault. By Halloween, police had their man. Sowell was arrested without any incident on October 31st, his mugshot capturing an unsettling smirk that seemed to revel in the carnage. As forensic teams continued their gruesome work, one question loomed over the investigation. How had a convicted sex offender managed to operate so brazenly for so long? The answer would emerge in a courtroom where Sowell would finally face justice for his unspeakable crimes. The courtroom became a theater of horrors in June 2011, as Anthony Sowell stood trial for what would become one of Ohio's most notorious serial murder cases.
Trial of Anthony Sowell now heads to the penalty phase, which could take weeks. But family and friends of the 11 women who died may be closer to closure today after the long list of guilty verdicts were read in open court.
Facing 85 charges, including 11 counts of aggravated murder, Soule initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, a strategy that quickly unraveled under the weight of overwhelming evidence. Prosecutors painted a horrifying portrait of a calculated predator who lured vulnerable women to his Imperial Avenue home with promises of drugs or alcohol before attacking them. Survivors brought the jury face to face with Soule's brutality.
Up those stairs,
How far up the stairs?
all the way to the 3rd floor. Turned around and punched me in my face and told me to take my clothes off. He said, "Bitch, take your clothes off."
Sean Morris described how she plunged from a second-story window to escape after being choked unconscious.
The detective told me, "You are a very lucky young lady," while he's taking these photographs. That man had no intentions on me coming out that house. But God said otherwise.
Latundra Billups recounted her harrowing survival, still bearing the marks from the extension cord Soule used to strangle her. Forensic experts detailed how victims were strangled with everyday objects: telephone cords, shoelaces, belts. Their bodies then hidden throughout the property like some grim trophies. The defense's psychiatric evaluations failed to convince jurors. One doctor even testified that Soule showed no signs of psychosis and understood right from wrong. After just 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts in July 2011. That August, they recommended death by lethal injection, a sentence Judge Dick Ambrose formally imposed days later. But the wheels of justice turned slowly. Soule's legal team filed multiple appeals, arguing everything from excessive media coverage to inadequate defense counsel. His execution date was postponed 6 times over the next decade, as appeals wound through Ohio's courts, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which declined to hear his case in 2017. The delays meant Soule would never face execution. But to everyone's surprise, he died in his prison cell on February 8, 2021, from undisclosed natural causes at the age of 61, leaving behind unanswered questions about potential additional victims and a system that failed to protect vulnerable women. Soule's house was demolished in 2011 and replaced by the Garden of 11 Angels, but Cleveland still feels the emotional impact. In 2021, Oxygen's Living with a Serial Killer show revisited the case through those who knew him, including his sister Tressa Garrison, who shared chilling memories and faced public backlash. The episode explored how families struggled to reconcile their loved one with the monster he became. Garrison received threats, her life shattered by crimes she didn't commit. The documentary revealed how Soule, a Marine and local figure, hid his crimes for years. The memorial honors victims like Crystal Dozier, Tishana Culver, and LaShanda Long. But families still seek answers. Why were missing person reports ignored? Are some lives more important than others? Does society subconsciously have more empathy for certain demographics when it pertains to crime victims? How did a known sex offender avoid scrutiny? Though the house is gone, the questions and pain remain. The story continues, revealing deep truths about justice, race, and who society chooses to protect. When we value every missing person report, when we listen to survivors, when we refuse to look away, that's how we rewrite this story. Now we turn to you. Subscribe for more deep dives into true crime's untold stories. Like if you believe every victim deserves equal attention. Comment how we can better protect vulnerable communities. Share to keep their stories alive. Because change begins when we pay attention. See you in the next video.